Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Perkins, and today I'm talking to author Tracy Barton Barrett. Tracy Barton Barrett has always been a lifelong devotee to animals, from her first job, working in a veterinarian's office, to pet sittings, to a counsellor with a specialty in pet loss. As a speaker and former psychology instructor, she has created presentations and led group on the human-animal bond, including staff of animal shelters. In her debut novel, Buried Deep in Our Hearts, dog, cat and horse storylines celebrate the important bond with our animals and to honour their memory. She hopes her novel will allow the reader to relate, reflect and reminisce. Hi Tracy, first of all welcome and thank you for coming on Book Talk Radio Club.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. Would you like to give Book Talk Radio Club's listeners a brief synopsis of Buried in Our Heart, Deep in Our Hearts?
Yes, so as you had mentioned, it's a novel that includes a dog, a cat, and a horse storyline. And it follows three families and the animals that touch their life. And then when they lose the animal, how they process their grief. And then the three families come together and they create a community solution to their grief so they can work through it as a community.
I think that's lovely. So this is a novel. Why did you decide to go down the route of writing fiction rather than self-help books dealing with how to get over losing a beloved pet? I mean, especially as you're a counsellor with a specialty in pet loss.
Right. So there's a story behind this one. So on the anniversary of when our kitty Kimball died, it was a few years after that, I was not having a great time. I was feeling moody. I was irritable. I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I decided I realized that it was the anniversary, and that's part of the thing too, is that we don't always pay attention to anniversaries. So I knew that I always wanted to write a pet loss book, and being the diligent student that I was, at the time, this was in grad school, because I knew anecdotally as well as personally that when you lose an animal, it's very similar to losing a beloved person in your life.
Sure.
But nobody was really talking about it at the time. So I got as many articles as I could. There weren't many at the time, and I was the studious student, and I had all my files and all my articles printed off and had them in the corner, and they sat there for years collecting dust. And I kept looking at them, and I'm thinking, I've got to do something with this. I can, write another self-help pet loss book, but there was no energy. So then fast forwarding to the anniversary of my kitty Kimball's death, it hit me one day, literally like a ton of bricks. Make it fiction. And as soon as that happened, it was like all these ideas were uploaded. It was like they had been suppressed all these years, uploaded, right to my brain, and I couldn't write them down fast enough. I couldn't write the characters down fast enough. So as soon as that happened, I knew it had to be fiction. The other thing, too, there's irony behind this, is as a child, I never read fiction. I was never drawn to fiction as a child.
Right.
Now I am. I love fiction, but I always went for self-help books. Even in elementary school, in grammar school, I went for the nonfiction. So when I told my mom I was writing a novel, she was like, "You do know what fiction is?" I was like, "Yes, I know what a novel is. I just was never drawn to them." So then, so as soon as it all came together, I just couldn't write down the ideas fast enough.
Nivy Emerson, Bryn Troxell and Jacqueline Stanton are the three main characters in your book. Tell me about them.
Yeah, so Nivy Emerson, she's the story that has the cat, Kitty Kimball, and she's based on my story with my husband. So she's more bold than I am, but there's a lot of what happens with Nivy's story that is my husband and my story. She's married with no children and has a cat named Kimball. Bryn Troxell is married to Julian. She has 2 children. They have the dog Tucker. And then Jacqueline Stanton is Bryn's mom. And her storyline is with the horse Ranger. And their animals, like I had talked about, Tucker is the main dog, Kimball's the main cat, and Ranger's the main horse in the story.
So behind the story of these 3 women and their families is a message, isn't there, to do with the community. What is that message?
I think the message for me the message that I had hoped to help, is that grief can be very isolating. When we're grieving, it's so easy to pull away. And what's ironic about that is that we have a deep primal need to be connected. So I wanted to show a way in which 3 families are hurting in different ways, and people show grief differently, particularly between, you could even show differently between cultures, between genders, between ages, but that it's grief. Yeah, it's grief nonetheless. So if it all come together and work on that, then it could be something really healing. So that's why that was my message that I wanted to help people with.
As a speaker and former psychology instructor, you've created presentations and led groups on the human-animal bonds. You've also presented talks at animal shelters. Were they different, and how so? I mean, what did you have to tell the staff at these animal shelters?
So staff at animal shelters are dealing with a couple different things. One is the loss of their own animals, because most of the people who work at shelters have their own animals.
They're animal lovers by the very fact of their job, sure.
Right. Or they'll take animals from the shelters home and foster them, and they turn into foster fails, and then they adopt them. So they're dealing with that, and then they're dealing with clients who might not be the best stewards of animals. So the things that's really big at animal shelters is something called compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue is basically it's a second-hand trauma that's related to your job. So they see the worst of humankind, unfortunately. Animals who are abandoned, animals who are abused, animals who are surrendered, animals who are surrendered for behavioral issues when, like a border collie, you can't keep a border collie in an apartment.
Of course not.
And not have them act out. And they'll say, well, the dog is bad. Well, that's not what a border collie was bred for. Looking at that, so they see a lot of really awful situations. Compassion fatigue is also really popular or very common among first responders, EMT, police, fire, anybody who experiences trauma as a result of their employment.
Sure.
So it's an actual trauma response. So we talk more about that in addition to grief after you've lost an animal, but also seeing the day, and then again, people who love animals who are the ones that have to euthanize them, and what that's like for them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really, really heavy things. ACO, animal control officers, often see this as well. So it's more focused on that. Right.
You also give a presentation entitled Healing from Companion Animal Loss. I've lost 2 dogs in the past few years, and it was extremely painful and very sad. What advice would you give to any of the listeners that have recently lost their companion animal?
Well, I'm just curious, what were their names? What were the animals' names?
One dog was Monty, and the other one was Barney.
Yeah, and I always ask, what the names are, because there's a lot of power in a name.
Yes.
And sometimes, saying the name again. Were they Cocker Spaniels?
Monty was a Cocker Spaniel, Barney was a Shih Tzu.
Shih Tzu, yeah. So, they become members of the family. And yeah, I mean, sometimes the sun rises and sets on them. I tend to do less advice. I just do more of acknowledging that the feelings of grief are difficult.
Yeah, definitely.
And, as you well know, and I mean, especially if you've had loss in the past few years like you have, that sometimes it can compound. So the thing that I like to get across just is that sometimes it's okay not to be okay for a while.
That's very strong, because we feel when it's a person, when it's an animal, whatever it is, we feel that we have to put a special face on it. We're dealing with it, but I like that. It's okay not to be okay. That's good advice. That's good advice. The memoriam page on your website is lovely, and there's a galaxy of much-loved animals. I hope these aren't all yours.
No.
Well, thank goodness for that. Why did you decide to have this gallery?
Well, like I just said, that names are really important. Also, pictures are very important. And I really think that every animal in that gallery was either an animal of mine, just a couple, or they were really important to somebody that was important to me.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to honor that these animals are important beings. They serve so many things, and all they ask for is food, or in the case of our two kitties, a moment alone. I mean, they've got their own schedule and agenda, but they just, they ask so little and they give so much.
Oh my goodness, don't they?
Yeah, and so I wanted to honor them in that way, and that even though that they're gone from our lives, they're not gone from our hearts, nor our mind's eye. So I just wanted a visual to show that there are beings that are not with us physically anymore, and you can, whatever spiritual or religious belief you have is where they are now, but that it's important to see them, that they're still with us.
I noticed on your author Facebook page that you had chosen to mark the 18th anniversary of 9/11 with photos of hero dogs. Apparently 300 dogs lost their lives, as well as the thousands of people. What part did these dogs play in 9/11?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact stories behind all the animals, but I just know that, 9/11, it's just one of the most incredible and the most awful, traumatic days, not only for everybody in the States, but around the world.
Absolutely.
Everybody felt that loss and shock and trauma. And the world on September 12th was just felt very united. And so I wanted, because the world includes these animals, including the ones that were the search and rescue dogs, I wanted to include them, and then turned recovery dogs, unfortunately. And these dogs gave 110%. I don't know if you happen to see, or any of the listeners, since the anniversary was just so close, there's a picture of a golden, I'm not sure if it's a girl or a boy, in like a cage that's suspended over all the rubble. And you can, and wearing his little vest inside that cage, and they're just transporting the dog to an area where he or she could do search and rescue. And you can see on the dog's face, not really, it's just a very difficult time for everybody, including the dog, but that she's there to do her job, and that she, feels this is what she needs to do. I do know that, the animals suffer too, and there's stories of the humans having to play hide and seek with the dogs, so they felt like they were actually doing their job, because it was starting to affect the dogs too.
Sure.
They were starting to feel or behave in a way that was depressed. And so the human search and rescue would hide under the rubble, so the dogs felt like they were doing something. So I just wanted to honor those animals as well.
There's a saying, those who teach us the most about humanity aren't always humans. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, what do we love about our animals? How would you answer that? What do we love about our animals?
Well, I just know that all the dogs I've ever had just show love without expecting anything back.
That's right. Yep. Unconditional love.
Yeah.
Purity, vulnerability, authenticity, genuineness, openness, approachability, accessibility, all these things that are like the positive side of humanity. They encompass. I mean, not to say they don't have their quirks and they're not perfect, but having the best side of humanity can show through with them because they're so pure. And, you know, we know their intentions too. If they don't like you, they're not going to pretend, you know, they're going to hiss or growl or kick you or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but with humans, it's so much more complex. So the straightforwardness of animals is just the best illustration of teaching us about our own humanity.
I couldn't agree more. Our pets definitely become part of our family, don't they? I now have an absolutely divine English Cocker Spaniel called Henry. Both my husband and I adore him, and he gets away with murder. What four-legged members of your family do you have, Tracy?
So, at the moment, because we travel quite a bit too, we have two felines, two cats. Their technical names are Rutherford B. Barrett.
I love this.
Also known as Bubby. And he is neither Jewish nor a grandmother, but the Bubby works for him.
He just looks like a Bubby.
He loves his belly rubbed. I mean, I could stand there all day. And you talk about Henry getting away with murder. Yeah. And then my other kitty, who's all gray, his formal name is Oliver Tolstoy Dostoevsky, because we think he's a Russian blue mix. But he goes by Monkey. If you say Oliver, he just looks at you and blinks. But Monkey, he will respond. And, you know, it's so funny because there's 4 of us in this household, my husband and I and the 2 cats. And each of us carry a quarter of the weight of this household. In fact, I think the power differential is a little different. We joke that we just pay the mortgage and they actually run this house.
Well, that's cats. That's definitely cats.
Right. So, but Monkey does greet us when we come home. So he's what they call a Velcro. It's usually used with dogs, Velcro dogs. They like to be with you all the time, and they're stuck to you. He follows us around, so he might be confused as to which species he belongs.
Let's go back to your book now. I see you're already receiving some lovely reviews for Buried Deep in Our Hearts, including the novel reads like a collection of love poems, especially poignant to anyone who's revelled in the joy animals bring to our lives and the sorrow we feel when they cross over the bridge. And this is a wonderful multi-plot novel about pets and their owners. The author does a good job showing how their lives and ours come together. I look forward to reading future work by this author. The Rainbow Bridge, where all animals cross over to when they die. Just thinking about my lovely 2 woofer boys there chokes me up. Tracy, how do you see the Rainbow Bridge?
I think it's a lovely symbol. I just think it's the most beautiful symbol of the connection and the reconnection that we might experience with our animals. I like to just believe that everybody has their own interpretation of that. Like, how do you see the Rainbow Bridge? How do you envision?
How do I see it? I see it as, well, I think it would be different for the different kind of species, but as I'm very much a dog person, I just see this place full of beautiful fields, loads of trees where dogs can just run wild.
Yeah. That's pretty congruent with, what I think, what a lot of people think, and that I like to believe that, we'll connect up someday again.
Oh, very much so. Very much.
Yeah.
I'd be very disappointed if we didn't.
Right. Get up there, it's like, hey,
yeah.
see you, Grandma, but we're...
Exactly. So what's next for Tracy Barton Barrett on the writing front?
Yeah, so I'm working on a YA novel now, a young adult novel that's a coming-of-age story about a horse-loving girl and all the ways that horses impact and influence her life despite the fact she cannot have one. So that's what I'm working on now. I have a couple other books, and if you talk to authors often, we always have many things on the burner, other ideas in the back
Sure.
of my head. But most of my fiction books will definitely be based on the human-animal bond.
Last of all, where can readers purchase Buried Deep in Our Hearts?
So it's available on Amazon, and I'm always available to come talk at a book club or go to a bookstore. And we love the UK, so if there's anybody over there. But I mean, Amazon is probably the easiest way to find the book.
Well, thank you. That's lovely, Tracy. Please come back on Book Talk Radio Club when you publish your next book. I'd love to chat with you and hear more. In the meantime, good luck for the future, and thank you everyone for listening to Book Talk Radio Club. Thank you very much, Tracy.
Thank you, Claire.
My pleasure.